Hey everybody, it's Eric Murray from the sugarhuddle.com. I did a story a little bit earlier on the website about, I called it Training Camp Blues. And basically I was just talking about a few somewhat key injuries that we've seen that's going to end a few guys' seasons or close to it that are really going to affect teams in certain ways. And I also offered an update on the three franchise quarterbacks from last year that are coming off of the ACL injuries, which includes Ryan Tannehill. Well, franchise is a little bit of a relative word in his sense, in his case. But anyways, Ryan Tannehill, Carson Wentz, and Deshaun Watson. I'll get to that in a little bit. But, some of the key injuries, and we see it every training camp that really affect teams. One that was really a big one is the Redskins, their rookie running back, Darius Geis out of LSU. He's a guy that some people thought was actually the best running back in this year's draft, even better than Saquon Barkley. Geis was supposed to go in the first round. He actually slipped to late in the second round to the Redskins. I think it was something like 57th overall. But anyways, at any rate, he's a bruiser, 5'11", 224, really, really talented running back. And, this is a Redskins team that in the Jay Gruden era, they just have not been committed to running the football. Their run game's been terrible. And on top of that, of course, their defense has been terrible. And that's why they've been mostly a non-playoff team with him. And, obviously, one of the big things this offseason is it looked like they weren't going to be able to re-sign Kirk Cousins, and so they let him walk in free agency, and they trade for Alex Smith. Well, the thing with Alex Smith is he's a guy who's very, very dependent on having a good supporting cast around him, having the offensive line, the running game, good, reliable receivers, and the defense. And already coming into a situation where, the team doesn't play a whole hell of a lot of defense, that's not a good thing for Alex Smith. But then especially when you consider that they also didn't have a running game, that's another bad thing for Alex Smith. And then all of a sudden you draft Darius Geis, and there's all this new hope and optimism and everything else. And then he ends up tearing his ACL in the first quarter of their preseason game the other night against the Patriots. So just like that, now you're back to the same incumbent running backs as before with Robert Kelly, Samaje Perine, and then, of course, Chris Thompson. Chris Thompson, who's like 5'8", $195. He's just a scat back. He's a speed back. Really, really good player. But he's only going to carry the ball so many times a game. He's just kind of an all-around player. He's not specifically a between the tackles type running back or anything like that. Kelly and Perine are both power backs, and they both have a lot of size and muscle to them, but neither one has really been that overly impressive. I like Perine a lot at Oklahoma, and I thought he would be kind of a diamond in the rough draft pick. So he could still emerge and still could have a breakout year, but I think really the hopes of trying to kind of reinvent this running game in Washington were really kind of hinged on Darius Geis having a big rookie year, because you remember last year Alex Smith, the breakout rookie, and Kareem Hunt in Kansas City, and that was really huge for Kansas City's offense, and it really helped Alex Smith as well. And then he thought maybe he'd have the same situation this year with possibly Darius Geis being that breakout guy. But now the Redskins, a team that a lot of people thought were just a borderline playoff team as is. I have them actually going 7-9 like they did last year and missing the playoffs. Some people thought they could go 9-7, 10-6, make the playoffs, but I think this could be the nail in the coffin for them. So I think this is the last thing they need, and I think this could be enough to say, they're definitely probably not making the playoffs now, because I don't know how the running game's going to be without Geis, considering how the last number of years have been post Mike Shanahan. And then the next guy, Nick Easton, for the Vikings, him and then the other guy I also talked about in the article, Daniel Sorensen, the safety of the Chiefs. Neither one's a particularly good player, but they're both starters. They're both average starters at best. But, in the case of Nick Easton, starting guard for the Vikings, he has that herniated disc in his neck that he had to get surgery on, and he's likely out for the season, which pretty much means they think he's out for this year. But the problem with Minnesota is not only did you just get Kirk Cousins, speaking of Kirk Cousins, a former Redskin, but not only did they just get Kirk Cousins, and this is a team that was an NFC championship last year, and they think now with Cousins they could legit win the Super Bowl. All of a sudden your offensive line's falling apart. You had I think it was the 7th ranked run game last year. But, Joe Berger retires in the offseason. Mike Remmers and Pat Elflein, two of your other starters, are both dealing with some significant injuries right now. And then you factor in Easton's basically done for the year. You've got a patchwork offensive line all of a sudden. You went from having a pretty decent or even above average starting line to now having no offensive line. So it's really going to set back your running game. It's really going to be a setback to Kirk Cousins and this offense. They looked really, really good the other night against the Broncos, but that's just one preseason game. So with all these injuries, we'll see what happens when the regular season starts. They'll have some challenging games early on. But anyways, really, even if Easton's not that great of a player, still losing another starter across your offense line is big because remember Dalvin Cook, who was off to a really good start his rookie year, then goes down in the fourth game. He's coming back from injury, and now he's going to play behind this possibly bad line, and then you wonder, is he going to get injured again? And how's Latavius Murray going to do? He had a pretty good year last year, and then, who knows what's going to happen this year if the line's not very good. So that could be a big setback, and that could be another thing, depending on what happens with Remmers and Elflein, that maybe prevent them from, maybe winning the Super Bowl. And then in the case of Sorensen, he's considered even more subpar than Easton. But the thing about Sorensen, again, he's a starting safety, and Kansas City has not really a whole lot of depth right now at safety because remember, or really secondary in general, because you remember Eric Berry tore his Achilles week 1 against the Patriots last year. He's already missed 41 games in his 8-year career. And he just injured, he just missed practice today because he has a heel injury, which is the same injury he had last training camp right before he tore his Achilles. And people are wondering if it's lingering effects and if he's going to have Achilles issues again. So who knows? He's like 29 now, so he's still in his prime, but, farther and further into your career, it does worry you. So, we'll see what happens there. But, if he starts getting hurt again, starts missing games, plus you already lost Sorensen, your safety position is really bad. And Armani Watts, the rookie from Texas A&M, and Robert Golden, the former Steeler, they're both now going to battle it out for Sorensen's job. But Golden's a career backup, okay player, decent in college, decent in the NFL, but mainly career backup. And Watts, really, really good player in college, but again, former fourth round pick this past spring. So who knows? He's far from a sure thing. And then, of course, the big thing was they traded away Marcus Peters, their star cornerback, to the Rams. So Kansas City could go from having one of the better secondaries in football over the last few years to having one of the very worst this year. And with Pat Mahomes, who's a second-year quarterback, basically glorified rookie, now the starter, and he's more of a gunslinger than Alex Smith, you just have to wonder, is this team going to be a non-playoff team, going to have a losing season? I had them going 7-9 this year, and I think that prediction looks better and better each day, even with a somewhat minor loss in Sorensen. Again, lack of depth in the secondary and defense that started to really kind of fall apart last year after a bunch of strong years. It's very, very concerning. So I'd definitely be concerned if I'm Chiefs fans, not as much about Sorensen in particular, but just in general, that secondary is starting to fall apart a little bit, especially now with this latest Eric Berry news. So I kind of lumped Eric Berry's situation into the Daniel Sorensen portion of my article. And then finally, last thing I just want to talk about real quick is those 3 quarterbacks I mentioned, the 3 franchise guys, tore their ACLs at different points last season, and now they're coming back. From what I've heard, it looks like Tannehill's doing fine recovering. He played in the preseason game against the Bucs the other night with 4 for 6. So he should be fine, but again, we just don't know, how good of a quarterback he is because he's been in the league now. Technically only 5 seasons because he missed last year, but nonetheless, he's been in the league since 2012. He's 30 years old, and it just doesn't seem like Miami's that sold on him as their long-term guy. But nonetheless, this is his last chance to kind of prove himself, and we'll see what happens there. But remember, he also missed the last 3 games of 2016, so who knows how long he's actually going to hold up for 2018. Wentz, it sounds like he's still having some trouble with the flexibility in his knee, kind of bending his knee and things like that. And remember, the rumor in the offseason was that he could not only miss week 1, but possibly the entire first month of regular season. So it looks smarter and smarter on the Eagles' part that they held on to Foles. But he should be back and fine. And then finally, Deshaun Watson. Remember, just like RG3 tore his ACL one knee in college and then tore the other his rookie year and was never the same. That's basically what's happened now with Watson, except for the never the same part, because I think he's more advanced than RG3. But at any rate, still concerning there as a dual threat quarterback. But nonetheless, all 3 of those guys are going to have to prove in the regular season. We've seen veteran guys who are kind of skittish coming back that first year back, like Brady and like Palmer and all those guys. So we'll see. It'll be interesting. But anyways, that's just a little bit of a training camp update with all these injuries. Remember, go to sugarhuddle.com and check out all the articles. I'm Eric Murray. Take care, and I'll have some more videos soon. Thanks.